know how we start all the time.
How did we start?
We start by saying we are live, my God.
So why do the numbers on this start with 6?
Yeah, that's right. That's
It's
good
a
question.
countdown, right? But
Yeah,
I
it's a
feel like it's a
countdown.
weird countdown.
Starts with seeds. That's
The
weird.
space
Yeah.
shuttle doesn't start with 6.
Just this one starts with seeds. Just
I
to
don't
be
get it. It's
different.
got to be another French thing that I don't understand
Probably, yeah.
every single time. How are you, Martin?
I'm doing awesome, Michael. What about you?
I'm doing awesome. Welcome back to eCommerce Undercover.
Welcome back.
It's good to have you here.
Great.
And you know, we're recording today at
At 7 Peaks.
7 Peaks. So I've
Yeah.
got all the gear. I can have the coffee cup. I purposely have the backwards coffee cup.
You have the shirt. You
I have the shirt, and I stole this shirt from a guy outside,
Oh, you stole it from him.
a young guy, because I can only beat up younger people and smaller people.
Very, very younger and very
Much
small.
younger, yeah, like 7. It's about as good as I get. So who's joining us today?
So today we have Ana from Olin.
Ana Jipa.
Exactly, yeah.
How did I do on the name, by the way?
Oh, that sounded great.
With a good heart, I said it.
Even better.
Nobody will get that joke except the 3 of us, but that's all that kind of matters, right?
Exactly.
So Ana is the co-founder and the CEO of Olin.
Mhm.
So it's great to have her here.
It is great to have you here.
Ana, where
Thank
are
you.
you based, if anywhere? Like, where are you right now?
Right now, I'm in Barcelona.
So your name looks very Spanish to me. Are you Spanish?
No. And I get that a lot, which makes Spain almost half home. But I was born in Romania, North
Oh, wow.
Romania. But I grew up in between Germany and Spain. So I believe I'm from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, which makes
Yeah, I
me
feel the
quite...
same way, actually. It's like my least favorite question is, where are you from?
Oh,
No, I'm
there's the
dead
2 of
serious.
us.
And it kind of, I always answer like based on where the other person is from. So if the other person's from California, well, then I was born in California, right? If that person went to school at MIT, well, my family's from Boston. If that person was born in Fukuoka, I lived in Tokyo. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can just keep going on and on about this. Fortunately for you, no one in my family has been to Romania, been to Spain, or was born in Germany. So I don't have any of that going. Anyway, how are you?
Oh, I'm very good. Very good. I speaking of where one is from, like I just came from US and there was a large trip participating in all these events related with NFTs and e-commerce. And basically like one has to like it has after COVID, like, and you know, having all these troubles, like you really kind of realize how important it is, and to kind of be everywhere and understand how the world operates at a
Yeah.
larger scale. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about that today with somebody, right? Like, unless you go somewhere and actually you're on the ground, it's so hard to understand what it's like there. And I haven't been in the United States since 2010.
A lot has changed, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. You've been there more recently than I have. Anyway, can we get a little bit more of your background? And then I want to understand what Olin does.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, well, it's hard to kind of make people see because it's not linear. It doesn't follow certain logic that
Even better.
perhaps. So I studied aeronautics at the like that was like sort of how I started my career. But very early on, I was really keen to enter the entrepreneurial world. Like I was a bit of a very energetic person, couldn't just like stand and sit. So the first projects were actually linked to Romania. I felt like I always wanted to be linked with the country. And I started like a project where we were bringing investors from Spain to invest in healthcare in Romania. And that sort of was like the beginning of how I started seeing and hanging out with more people from the entrepreneurial space, and like one thing after another that led me to an internship in United States very early on, and that back in 2011 2012, like I got to see how Silicon Valley worked. I was an intern at a venture capital, and I had to interview every day actually startups from um, with all sorts of ideas. Like I remember first time like a guy came and explained like an app for um, where to walk your dog, and how like how you can actually realize like where are the dogs that they're more proper to be friends. And then he hit that, like he just like throw a number on the valuation of it, and for me those numbers were completely like what, oh my, like I can't, I come from a place where we never even imagine like mention the zeros on a paper. So that was where I realized like that was different world. And it changed my perspective of things very early on. So then I came back to Spain, and I joined a team very early on. They were building an API management platform, so that gave me the chance to see how a startup gets to be built, solidified. Then it was quite of a time that like APIs were a big deal. And again, like I was really fortunate to actually be part of that team, because it enabled me to see how companies are starting to treat their data as a product. And we eventually, like they sold to Red Hat, and that was like a good experience to see like that process. After that, like I had a project in fashion that led me to understand more how e-commerce works, and from the first hand, um, as I said, one thing after another. I did that more for fun, but in between, like I work for Mexican government, helping them to understand how to treat data in order to secure, in order to help citizens for security purpose, understanding citizens' behavior and create like security patterns. Um, and of course, like
You don't seem
yeah.
old enough to have done this many things. By now you're like 45, I think, based on all this experience.
Yeah, well, age is relative. Like you
I get
never
it.
can
Like
tell.
I feel like your next thing was I was on the International Space Station. I learned how to speak Russian.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm. Maybe I hope I'm not gonna be disappointed. There's not much in the story, but like, definitely, like I believe that if you're sort of like if you're eager to understand how things work, and you have a
Right.
certain like curiosity, like one thing leads to another. But like to make sense of the linearity of the career was always based on like how technology is improving people's lives
Right.
at its larger scale, and how companies are treating all these tools in order to improve services and enable like a much more market expansion in that sense.
Yeah, I can see it. So what is the genesis of Olin then? And like, does the
So
name mean anything? Is it an acronym for something? Is it a town you were born in? Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, I believe like all in comes from the meaning of all in, everything in.
got it.
But then the O itself has sort of a game with the fact that it represents ownership. And I believe like this is all like more uh, the branding team having to have more say in it. But um, actually the idea came from one of our like advisors partners, and before that the company was called Oki, and we were like playing with the name and saying like, oh, Okie dokie, like that doesn't sound correct for a company that has so much potential.
Right. So what does it do exactly?
Well, so the genesis of the concept and the idea started like almost 4 years ago. Like at that time, I was working for venture capital as a partner in Europe, and then I was trying to, I was like um, seeing all these companies in our portfolio from the fintech perspective, like talking about all sorts of things. But mostly, one of them was like, oh, what if identity is linked to payments, and that kind of opened up a world, and I had a chance to understand very well, or at least like from firsthand, like how payments are trying to evolve, being like having a big role in what it's e-commerce part. But at that time, like when like we were seeing like banks and wallets sort of having a start, I realized that well, people's wealth is not based on what they have in their bank account, but also all sorts of things like they own. And that opened up my mind of understanding that, oh, maybe like people should have their own inventory of things, and how can we make that happen. So we started with making an app that basically will enable people to build that inventory, but there was a lot of friction. I didn't even myself use that app, so that's that's hard to sell, I believe.
That's a problem.
Yeah. You're like, this is not working for me.
Yeah. I'm not the
Yeah.
first customer.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like that's what happens, right? Like you envision something, you write it on paper, but once you start executing, like, paper can handle anything. So once you execute, like, the reality is completely different, like mapping it out. So we 2 years ago, like, literally we started like creating, solidifying what is Olin, creating a company, bringing partners into the game, um having I've been very like lucky and blessed for all the people that kind of join along the way, and like the talent that we've been having. So none of this will be none of this will actually exist if it wouldn't be for them. But considering like the challenge of and the ambitious project that we're taking on. So yeah, back to your question, I believe that what the short explanation would be that, well, Olin is um, software that aims to be injected at the point of sale system, and basically translates receipts into tokenized assets, enabling people to capture the asset ID that will reflect ownership into their inventory. So we got to that by understanding, like, you creating your own inventory, there's certain friction. So trying to get that friction away from, by the time that I was trying to use our own app that will allow you to just take pictures of everything you own at home and create a profile for one of each of those assets, like, was too much of a friction, like. But the logic is like, why, if this thing already had an identity on internet, it's not really transferred to my wallet when I'm purchasing it. And that kind of came with more of um looking very deep into the philosophical meaning, perhaps, of payment. Like, what is a payment? What is the act of paying for something? And there is much more than an expense. And to me, like, for me, there was like an opportunity of a relationship, of a bet, of like, but definitely not an expense. So like I might pay for a pair of sunglasses a certain price, but if tomorrow I believe it's a great design, and 3 days from now Lady Gaga decides to buy those two, like, my sunglasses might be worth more. So there was like all these things, like, I could envision about, like, hey, what if, like, when I'm making a payment, actually I'm also extending my DNA potential, because everything I purchase, it enables me to do things, right?
I have so many questions
Go ahead.
based on what you said.
Go ahead.
My first question is really down to earth, but once I have this inventory in my wallet, what's happening? What do I do with that? Like, what's the next step?
Yeah. um Well, that's the magic in it, and I believe that, like, when we started Olin, it was way before, actually. Well, way not way before, but definitely like 6 months or 7 months before, like, Dapper Labs and NBA Top Shot, like, sort of like launched and made like all the NFT thing be a thing, right? And that helped to, because like all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, look,
People
we're
understand.
visioners. People understand we were right, right? Like,
Yeah.
um so like you take, you have that feeling over, like, oh, you see, like, I'm good. And then, like, it goes away very soon, as like
See,
See,
where have I heard that before?
I'm wondering.
so yeah, like, as I said, like, a payment is much more than just an expense, right? From my point of view. And then Olin aims, like, to be the wallet that once you save, well, to be the asset registry that once that asset sits on your wallet, becomes the meeting point where brands and third parties offer services. So in this case, like, I save the asset, and that's where I get to store warranty, guarantee, digital manuals, um, like royalty, scarcity, that those are all sorts of smart contracts embedded in, more speaking, like all these tools like Web3 it's offering right now. But um, another way of explaining it is like the potential of storing, because you own this thing right now, it enables to do things. So let's say, like, I purchase a tennis racket, I store its identity. Then what if we syndicate um, what if we have a syndication of services that shows me where are the closest tennis courts, who's willing to play tennis with me, who's willing to teach me tennis. I can insure my tennis racket. So it's another form of understanding how the services like can come along, just because I made a decision of purchase.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but like for example, going back to your tennis racket example, does it mean like now, thanks to the app, thanks to the wallet, like we can know who has a tennis racket. So then it's easier for us, like to, for example, advertise a tennis court or tennis lesson or do something like that, because like we get the data of who bought the racket, which before we could not have. Because like if you just buy online, for example, or if you just go to a shop and you buy the racket, you cannot like get everybody would get the racket in the town. But if everybody is using your app, then we can get all the
Mm.
information and we can talk to these people more directly. Is that the point?
Not really. In the sense, in the sense that like we well, first of all, we're like more of a backend company, and we've built it a wallet because there are no wallets that will sustain proper inventory management. So like our backend through our API enables, through the metadata, third parties to design services or connect services from insurance, from like other like offer marketplaces, which means that like we identify that the thing at the time of purchase, and then you get stored on your wallet under very high level privacy levels. Like we believe that like it is in within your right to know what you own, and ultimately like if you want to make that public, it will be through marketing it with other tools. But like our belief is that once you store that asset, it's like sitting on a vault that nobody knows that it's you behind as an owner, unless you want to share that. So when third parties deliver services like insurance, they will deliver through the asset, not directly to you. So that's why like we believe like the asset becomes the meeting point. So our belief is that the value of something, it's equal to its information. So the information can be like, because as I said, like the digital manos goes with it, the authenticity, the guarantees, the warranties are, because are linked to it, they can be transferable in time in the future. So this is a way that we envision, because like it's an very we aim to make a very frictionless way for people to build up their inventory at the time of purchase. At the same level, we want to give them tools to make it easy for them to put those assets back in circulation, um,
Yeah, so this
coming
is the
from a
big
very, yeah.
this is the big change. Is it's changing it's changing purchase from just a transaction to like an acquisition of data and an acquisition of value. And tell me where I have this wrong. Are you and it can be no, but are you minting an NFT every time I buy something as well, so that that ownership then gets represented by some kind of digital certificate that's unique,
Yes.
right?
So
So if you do that, then you're disintermediating the connection between that asset and me, and just making that asset a thing alone that happens to sit on a network that is kind of walled in by my wallet, but can then be transferred immediately ownership to somebody else because of the uniqueness of its ownership that gets created at the moment that I purchase it.
yes,
So you're changing the mindset around what ownership actually means. And what you're really doing is changing the way people think about asset ownership at scale. You're trying to get them ready for the digitalization of everything, right? So an NFT today sounds like something like really tricky and fancy and looks like a monkey and is only art. But the reality is that the ERC 721 token creates a new type of digital and legal framework and infrastructure for ownership of everything, not just for art. And if you build that into wallets at the moment of purchase, you're right. Now what you're doing is you're saying, and a tennis racket's a great example of this, but it could be a car, it could be a tire, it could be anything. But that as I accumulate assets, not for investment purposes or anything, but every time I buy something, if I buy this cup, it's an asset. But if Martin wants to buy it from me, I can instantaneously sell it to him if he has an Olin wallet, and we agree on what that value is worth. And all the information that's associated with that is then transferred to him from me via the wallet. Is that right?
yes, yeah,
Okay. But you see the way that changes asset ownership. And the other thing, too, is that people will then wonder generationally, when I buy a house, how come I can't Olin it? Yeah, because shouldn't that asset then be sit in my wallet the same way that my tennis racket does? Because from an asset ownership standpoint, what's the difference?
Yes. So looking backwards from how actually secondhand marketplaces are performing today, like there is a lot of fraud in it. There is a
Yep.
lot of randomness. So as I said, like um, everything that represents the asset, like I'm looking at it as like, well, when I was like a kid, like my parents used to store the packages of these things and the boxes, like just in case something in the future, like you want to resell it. So we had a bunch of
Like over
boxes.
there,
Like over there.
like right over there, there's an SM70. Because I was thinking about this when you were saying
Yeah,
it.
that's what I was
It's the
thinking.
same thing. Like nobody needs a
Yeah,
basement anymore because
right.
they have an Olin wallet. It's essentially what you're saying. Because I don't have to maintain all this stuff because it automatically gets transferred. That's why I said, like, here, one of the things you said I thought was really interesting, and that is, what is it? It's the accumulation of information is where the value is,
Yes,
right? The value
exactly.
equals the information equals the value. And you kind of gloss over this idea of the warranty and the guarantee and all this other stuff, but that stuff is really important, right? And
Yes.
and sorry, Anna, but I do an entire podcast about insurance and insurtech. So this idea that I now have an asset that has a unique identifier that sits on a platform that can then get insurance attached to it in a way that's digital is really interesting to me, because now you're adding more information onto an asset that's insured on a platform. It's a whole new distribution model actually for insurance and insurtechs as well. But there's a health aspect to, like, this goes really deep when you think about what people own, and you do it all at the point of sale. So that means that if I go into a store that sells tennis rackets or that sells whatever, the moment I buy it, it creates this thing in my wallet. Am I paying with cryptocurrency or can I pay with my credit card? Like, how does this really work? Because then the transaction can be with anything. Like, how does that work?
The transaction can be with anything. All we do is
Cash?
actually translate the receipt. So as long as you get a receipt, additionally to it, you will get those tokens. Like we're trying to sort of get into the brick mortar and understand like how that will like ultimately operate. Like might get a QR code at the end of your receipt, you scan it, and that's where your tokenized asset sits. But it's up to the user to decide which one of those things they want to actually save on their wallet, right? Like and that's where we kind of want to make sure that we don't fall like we had a lot of debates over like what's the best angle to launch, what's the best angle to go to market, and it's easy to just like think of like, oh, let's go for categories. But the main principle, like one of the principles of the company was, well, we have to be neutral because we cannot decide what is value to who. This has to be offered at a larger scale. So if somebody considers like storing something that for me I will never think that actually it's worth of storing, like and saving it on my inventory, then they should have that right to do so. Like, and that comes from looking at the secondhand marketplaces. When you see like I was like looking at all the product and like, who on earth has time to post like a glass that costs €1, like only for the time, like
But this
and
is,
still
yeah.
people do
So,
it, right?
yeah. So this, I was, the point I was going to make is that I think that a lot of people forget that the digital world at some level is going to mirror the offline world and the analog world, right? So you and I may have a completely different view on whether saving the box for a microphone has any value, right? And for me, it has multiple levels of value. One is I think the box looks beautiful, but second of all, maybe I store my warranty and my stuff in there.
Yes.
But you may not care. You may just think like I'll have the microphone for as long as it lives, and then if it dies, never mind, I'll buy a new one, right? So you're right. This idea of what constitutes value is different for everybody. And I may not even put this in my wallet, but you might.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Interesting.
So with everything that's going on today, from supply chain crisis and like climate change and inflation, like more and more behaviors around, oh, well, more and more like it's being seen that people rely on their belongings, and their purchasing approach, it's mostly betting on things like most likely will have potential to be like placed back in the market for a resale. And that's where I think like um, the circular economy component comes very strong in it. Like you want that asset to have a long lifespan as it gets, and change hands in time, which in that sense is like, imagine I buy a fridge, I use it 1 year, I pay $700 for it, I sell it with $500 a year after. My usage was $200 for it in time, right? Like it's replacing assets back in the market and put them in circulation is one of things like um, we intend the most, because our company, even though like sounds tech and sounds, we are going towards a very sustainable path of like, why printing manuals, why all of these things should be digitalized. Let's make it easy for people to put assets back in circulation, because one of the frictions is like, I have to decide where it takes me 15 minutes in understanding one of those platforms, and which one is going to be, and start creating a profile of this thing. And yeah, so that's where, so we believe the world should, and some things shown that it's going towards.
Do you partner with, Martin's going to love this.
Tell me, some French people again?
No, no, no. Well, because if at the point of sale, right?
Mhm.
Let's just say I buy a refrigerator. It's a great example. That refrigerator has a model number. It has a warranty associated with it. It also has an instruction manual. I don't want to read it. I don't even want to get it. I don't want to get it printed. It kills trees. It's bad for the environment. But there has to be some product information associated with it, which means a company like Bluestone, which is an entire PIM system,
Mhm.
has all this digitalized information about product information management. That's what PIM is. So do you partner with them as well to get that product information? Not with Bluestone per se, but with companies like this that have
Like,
massive amounts of data around individual products and individual SKUs, so that when somebody buys something, it's automatic. They just don't need to scan it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. So on we are in like in discussions with PIMS and DAMs, because like they have information management asset. But then like it's important for us to actually um because information is just a description of the thing, but then like anything that it's linked to services by attaching warranty, guarantee, like that depends on the merchant or on the brand, and also the tools that they're using. Like the differentiator here is like um who are we talking with? Like brands that are basically like a large like multinationals, or are we talking about small and medium businesses which have been flourishing since like the democratization of manufacturing. And like all these e-commerce tools like from Shopify, like we see more and more of those brands that are like particularly offering a small variety in their inventory, but they're the best of doing that product. Like there's this Bermuda toaster that I'm like crazy about the design, and that's all they do, right? Like, and it's and taking like that example of this guy is like, oh, well, this is not marketing. I haven't even like I want one of those, but like one of what fascinates me is like it has a whole community about how to make a toast, and people will like, because you own that thing, all of a sudden you're part of this community that share recipes and like know how to hack the asset. So like things go so much further along on because I bought this, I'm part of this crowd that actually knows how to make recipes. Like the use cases are infinite, and it all starts by first identifying this thing. And that's where like when we said about the brands, and like we are trying holistically to cover all these use cases through our API, enabling them to connect just by the fact like we identify it and we put an owner behind it.
This is a massive change in the way that commerce takes place. Let me give you again an old example. In the old days, if you bought like a Hondo cord,
Mhm.
you could actually get club membership in like the local Hondo cord ownership team.
Mhm.
And then on the weekends, you'd go meet with other people that had like a Hondo cord.
Like for example, if you buy an Harley Davidson, like
Same
you are
thing.
part of a team, you are part of a club,
But
right?
now you can do this with any product.
Mhm.
But it dives down deeper into, even if you're like a small e-commerce player, like she said, that just makes a toaster.
Mhm.
If you connect to the APIs now, this is now makes sense why the payment builds a relationship, because you're not just buying something, you're buying a thing that's connected somehow to other people that have actually already bought it, to the company that made it, to the seller that sold it to you, and to the company that could potentially insure it for you.
Mhm.
But now you can do this at scale. This is one of those interesting things where technology now allows every merchant to act like a gigantic merchant, but also every product that you buy to potentially build a community around it. And we know what the power of community is. It's just making my mind race a little bit to try to think, okay, if I can, from the point of payment, from the point of purchase, right? So you're talking about what, scanning a receipt?
It's automatic.
That's
In
what I
this
want to know, right?
case,
So when I
there's
buy
like,
something, it just automatically happens. So let me ask you this though. You call the Olin like a wallet, or you make a wallet. If I pay directly from that wallet, then does it just automatic? Do I get a choice at purchase time to just go, never mind, I don't want to put this asset into my wallet, or definitely put this in because this is part of a community that I want to join, kind of thing?
hmm,
Do you know what I mean? Or is it just automatic? It
yeah,
just goes in. I've got to delete it. Like, how does all this work? If there's an API, it should be really straightforward. Yeah.
exactly. So the way our technology works is, we're embedded at the point of sale system, and then we're just an additional service through the receipt. So basically, digitally, when like, and the payment can happen in any sorts of ways. Like it can be through Visa, through like, doesn't matter to us what's like the proper checkout that people uses for the payment. We're just like, w- the easy way to explain it is like, we're building bidirectional exchange of value at the time of purchase. So money goes one way, Olin goes the opposite way by offering the asset identity to the owner, that just like, to the customer, right? So we're an asset registry service at the time of purchase, which means that when the same way you get digitally your receipt delivered through an SMS or an email, additionally to it, you get the collection of those assets that you bought, and you decide which one of those you want to register. And that's where we kind of build our own all-in wallet that, like, you can save it in there and have notion of it. But we expect that in the future many more wallets will come with much better features than we're perceiving right now on our own wallet. So that's why, like, we want to see more of those coming and cooperating with our backend database to enable these people, because we believe that's the whole point of it. Like, those assets are supposed to be portable since you own them. So uh, and like, following up with, once that asset sits, that asset could be filled with all what we said, like authenticity, guarantee, warranty. But like, the the extension of its usability, as we said, it's like, well, like, it could be because I purchased this right now, I'm a member, and that asset identity card, it's my membership pass. Because I purchased this, like, this asset can link public data of it. So one of the examples is like, oh, like, if there's is like a collection of sports, signed by their, like, the athlete, right? And this athlete all of a sudden, like, wins this game, like, my shirt signed by him, it's worth much more than before, right? So that's where we kind of like, like, trying to see how, like, value might just change, because right now there's data around it. So one of the examples I will give, it's, I had these speakers, and I was trying to sell them, and I put them on a secondhand marketplace, and people were asking me on a chat, like, why am I selling them so cheap? And I'm like, what? Like, I thought, like, actually, i'm I'm being a little greedy here, but like, and I didn't realize that. And then I started investigating why people is actually telling me that this is cheap. I feel like it's a fair price, it's an old speaker. And I realized afterwards that actually those speakers were awarded by the MoMA Museum as one of the best designs, and that made it, it didn't even matter if they work or not, they were valued. And I had no idea. I So this is where kind of I believe that because you store that identity on your wallet, like you never know in time how value my perform, right? How that will play out. But and the same thing goes, like it's almost the way we see it is like we're sort of breaking like this limits of physics of space and time. Like we deliver this asset identity, but that becomes like a package, a digital package that brands and third parties at any time they can deliver value. Like we said about manuals and guarantees and all this. So I see a future where maybe manuals are not going to even be necessary, because it's you maybe there's installed a system with VR that shows you how to fix the thing and how to, but all that engagement will happen through this asset identity.
So if everybody has asset identity, is there a place for Olin or somebody else as a third party to build like a real-time market for similar assets globally, right? So let's just say in a world where, pick a number, 25 million people are on the Olin platform, all of their refrigerators, fans, and air conditioners, let's say, and cameras are registered on the system. And if something gets value or more value and somebody wants to buy one of those things, that there's this real-time market trading for all the things that sit on the platform. Now, if I don't want to have my assets exposed to the platform, I can keep them private, like you said, right? Because privacy is important to you. But
Yeah.
instead of having to like take a photo of it and then go to Yahoo or go to eBay and list it, I can just make it available on the Olin platform for somebody else to then digitally bid for it and purchase it, and then I can just send it to them. Do you know what I mean? Like if you build that
Yeah.
marketplace, is that something you're thinking about, or?
Yes. So we believe that like there should definitely be a legit place where seekers and providers are meeting on a very safe, under safe circumstances, because all this asset they have a legit entry point by being registered at the time of transaction, where there's other parties vouching for this happening. So in our case, like um, the the management part of the asset, I believe, is like asset can have many like the status of the asset can go from being owned to being on sale, uh, to rent, donate as a gift, then it's stolen, it's lost, it's destroyed. Like so, all this like it's defining what is like its status. It's more of defining like what's the usage you want to put in it in the market of it. So like this will be a great use case for lost and found. Like if I declare that something has been lost and then it goes into this like list, then you can like create like an incentive program where there's no need of bad actors at the re-commerce part of the asset, right?
Go ahead.
What's the status of Olin right now? Like how many people use it?
we're
How well
really
developed is the tech? Like what's the status?
so we're at like we're at a very early stage compared to where Olin should be, and it was more a matter of getting the right angle of go to market. For example, like at the beginning, we're considering categorization, but the importance here is getting our technology distributed through as many point of sale systems as possible. So all these receipts like are transformed into tokenized assets, and then with it will be the distribution of the app. So right now, it's we're just at the beginning where we're doing like some um, like we already are operating with on the Shopify, but we're looking into expanding to others such Lightspeed. But in this sense, like our intention is to operate at an API level to make it as easy as possible for these services to be installed at the time of purchase, and then for third parties to start building solutions around our API. But with that comes with like us distributing the app. So for now, like we do have around like 1,000 users, but like we're facing the chicken and egg problem where we have to make sure like there is enough like there's enough point of sale systems absorbing our technology and enough owners interested on capturing it.
You should talk to a great company called Dr. Tech, like they are competing directly with Shopify, and I guess they would love to to integrate.
If we just knew somebody that ran a company that was in the e-commerce space, it may be a good.
That would be great, right?
I have to think about it
Yeah,
though.
I'll have
See
to
if I
think about
know
it.
anybody that does this.
I have no idea, but you should definitely like try to find somebody from there.
But Anna, this is a big idea. Like this is a really big sort of overarching change to the way that commerce is done, because what you're thinking about is not just the purchase, not just the transfer of I give you money, you give me an asset, or you give me a product. Because after I buy any product, right, like whether it's a microphone or a camera or the television on which we're watching this recording take place, so many other things have to happen where there's friction,
Mhm.
right?
But also, like, if you want to resell that, do you still have the guarantee? Do you still have the manual? Like, most of the time, people, can just throw it away, right?
But
Like,
more importantly, that's important too. But I know a guy in Japan who runs an entire business around taking product and just validating that they are what they say they are, right?
okay.
That if it's a Prada bag, it's really from Prada.
Mhm.
And this is a gigantic business. It's called E-Lady. He's been running this business in Japan for 25 years. They manually inspect everything. They make sure that everything's okay. But if at the point of purchase,
Just
it turns into a digital asset that sits on a blockchain,
and so much easier.
that's verifiable, it's 1,000 times easier. And that never goes away because it's immutable. So you can't change it. And the fact that it's associated with that particular asset means now that creating fraud is a lot harder. Is that fair?
It is fair. It is fair. And in our on our side, like we're not trying to do everything. Like we know we want to create market opportunity for all these companies, like such what you mentioned from Japan. Like we're not intending to do authenticity as on the resale part, but like if there's technologies that already are doing so, they can inject their services in our platform and deliver the authenticity process through our identification system. So um same as like when I was like defining our backend, like we enable right now through our API e-commerces to build Web3 fields at the time of like uploading a product into the um, a website for the purpose of putting it on sale. So right now you just have information about the asset where you can put an image, a text, a description. Our backend enables all these e-commerce to expand those features and enabling the merchant or the brand to add scarcity, to add royalties, to add the guarantee, the authenticity. So we offer all this marketplace for injection. So at the time when this asset is being paid for, there's this exchange that those smart contracts and token will follow in the future, right? So um, you said it before. This is very big, and we know the responsibilities that lay on our shoulders. And at the same time, on the context that we believe this is the right time to make large companies to orchestrate their services around our solution.
Is there a is I hate buzzwords, but is there kind of like a virtual universe, metaverse aspect to this too, where people that can then create digital products can also run them through the Olin system, so that anything that I create that's digitally native is now in my wallet, that is an asset, almost like a game asset that then can be traded. I mean, if you're familiar with Axie Infinity and everything that's going on in
Yeah.
yield games and stuff like that, you're creating a platform as well that allows that type of thing to be created, minted, and then also transacted. Is that what you're doing as well?
So like it's interesting you said that because like as I said, like looking at a purchase all the time when somebody makes a decision of purchasing something, like it's an opportunity to cross sell insurance and other things, right at the moment. So we like that cross sell, like we see it as like, what if I want to have this asset on its pure digital native identification that I can use it on a game? Like I buy this tennis racket right now, I want this tennis racket to be in the game. So then we see this being as an extra cost that all these Axie Infinities, like Sandbox, like they could like design how you could hold this asset on the metaverse, but that will be independent. Like we offer the rails for it as linking it to a decision making of the purchase of the asset, right?
Right. So you threw out this word, the sandbox. How familiar are you with the sandbox, with Animoca Brands, and with this entire system that they're building over there?
Well, I guess like it's fascinating what they're doing, and also I believe the way they're trying to embed commerce into games, it's interesting, and how they're trying to bring brands into the space. Um, it creates these new market opportunities for brands, right? Expanding
Yep.
um, the possibilities in within the space. I think like e-commerce for long, and even internet, has been flat. Like there's so much to do and so much to build that we're not trying to break the old rules. We're just like continuing the work that has not yet been finished. So
Right. I mean,
um,
this is the whole point of e-commerce undercover, is that it's not been
It's
solved
not
yet, that
solved
it's
yet.
ridiculously flat, and that there's been no innovation, which is why we want to talk to people like you. And that's, it sounds sarcastic, but it's not, right? This idea that there's so much work to do in the e-commerce space because it's been left to just gigantic marketplaces, not to innovate, but to aggregate and to consolidate in a way that made it difficult for other companies to innovate. I feel like I'm a rapper now because I just keep rhyming, but that's not intentional. But you understand the point. But what you're trying to do is really trying to get in the middle of all of this asset accumulation and say, I can digitalize that asset, or the ownership or the information around that asset, at the point of sale. And once I do that, I can change the idea of what it means to own that asset, whatever it is. That to me is actually really interesting.
It is.
Yeah. Anyway.
I have this this sort of dream of seeing that the same way you buy a token and you're like really sort of excited for how it might perform, like every single purchase, every single value exchange that I'm making, um, like will basically might become a collectible, might become a membership, might be much more richer than like how society and capitalism, like it's limited to the fact like earns and expenses minus and plus. And I think like there's so much game into it, just for how the internet is allowing us to operate among each others, and like how and same as like we are familiar with Google and how it syndicates information, but like how services and marketing like might be syndicated, it might be much more linked to our behavior. And in this case, like my decision of paying for something can syndicate services, not as much as me going on a search engine and looking for that particular. So I think like the dimensions of us interacting with digital solutions will go beyond what is it now.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, we have to reconceive the way we understand what buying something and owning that thing means.
And maybe we can go further and just change the reason why we buy something. Like, for example, for the microphone, we buy them first because we need them, but also because you love them. And that's another reason to buy something, right? And maybe
Don't take away
tomorrow.
my microphone.
You mean this one, this one, this one, this one, or all the one there?
All the ones in the box.
One
Leave
in
me
the
alone.
box. But yeah, but maybe also like just listening to you what you just said, and maybe we can buy something for other reason than just owning microphone or owning a T-shirt, right? There might be like something further or something like deeper into that soon.
What kind of response do you get? Because to get something installed at POS, right? You've got, the merchant actually has to agree to it. You can't just do it, right? They've got to connect to the APIs and do all this stuff. I'm always curious, like, what the sales cycle is like for this. Do you know what I mean? Like, the first time you walk into a retailer, whether they're gigantic or just a mom and pop or even just an online retailer, do they just like shrug their shoulders and say like, I don't get this? Or do you know what I mean? Like, what's the range of reaction you get
You mean
normally?
the merchant or the
Yeah, because without the merchants employing this, right? You're right. There's a chicken and egg problem, right? Because if the merchant has it but no one knows it's there, then I'm not going to register my asset. But if the merchants don't think anybody's going to register their asset,
right,
then what's the win for them, kind of thing?
right,
So
like I
go ahead.
yeah. So I just came from San Francisco, and I was at this bike shop, and we were like talking with this bike shop and explaining them like how Olin is. And I was sort of overwhelmed because like they were more excited about it than I was. They were like, "Oh wow!" Like because like expanding the opportunity of them engaging with the buyer on a post purchase level. Like right now, the only engagement you have, it's only if there are certain returns and you want to make that experience as fascinating as possible. Like, but but it's a return. Like, but how you can expand the possibilities of a market of solutions on a post purchase level. So for bikes, in this case, is like, oh, I buy one bike, but like you buy a bike maybe one every 5 years, depending how your passion is. But um, there's so much into it, like maintenance, changing of um, some of the pieces. Then like you're part of a group because you sort of own this bike, and right now you can go and ride with these people. Like the possibilities that they saw, like in this case, they were like, I want it now. Like we have not had any sort of step backs from brands, and in our case we just felt the pressure of having to deliver um, without creating friction or taking them from their familiar environment of current technologies that they're using. And from the point of sale system perspective, like the feedback is really positive because they want to enrich the experience, right? They want to enrich the experience of the payment. So we are nothing but an additional service. Same as like if you get points for having made a purchase and they will print those papers for you and like, oh, next time you have this discounts for your next purchasing within our like so all those are actually extensions linked to the receipts. So we're going on the same line. To give you an analogy, actually, of like the best analogy to understand how Olin operates, like we kind of sympathize with how like Shippo. Like Shippo is like an API that like does pure physical distribution of assets, right? And then at the time of purchase, you kind of like decide, and they have to have a physical address for delivering the goods to you. We consider ourselves like the ship of the digital rails. Like we got to give us, you have to give us what's that public key you have in order for us to deliver you this digital packaging that constantly, it's much more than a packaging. It's like as we just spoke about it, it's the meeting point of all what it connects you with this asset.
Really interesting to me.
Definitely it is.
Go ahead.
I'm really looking forward, like getting my sellers on Dr. Tech asking me for this. Like, because I feel at some point, like either we introduce that idea to them, and as you just said, like we just ask them like, what do you think, and like what is your reaction. But also like at some point, like that sellers are going to ask for it and be like, Martin, you got to be with Olin, you got to talk to them. This is awesome what they do. I want to get that into my store, right? And that's gonna be an interesting point, I guess.
Yeah. So I just wrote down like, how about for the studios that we build, right?
Mm-hmm.
If every time somebody uses it, they join the club of people that have used the studios,
Mm-hmm.
right? So not necessarily just the loyalty thing, but at point of sale, they're buying more than just the time and the digital like right to use it, but buying more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of cool. But I do think there's a mindset changer for the way that assets get bought and what the purchase of that asset means, and getting people used to the idea that their ownership is more than just taking that product home, that there's so much more associated with it. And I think it may actually take a generational shift to figure it out. Like, Anna's mother may not understand this completely, but her cousin probably does. No insult to your mom, who's probably brilliant. But you understand what I
Well,
mean though, right?
it took me a while to convince them. Like that was like that's why we actually even build like the wallet, because like it's like we can't be just pure backend. Our mothers need to understand what we're doing here. Like,
I think that's a great title
like
for the episode.
Yeah, my mom needs to understand
Yeah.
what I'm doing. Why my mother doesn't understand NFTs. Anyway, that was
exactly.
awesome.
That was great. Perfect.
Yeah. Ana
Thank you
Maria
so
Jipa,
much, guys.
thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you very much.